Zimbabwean journalist Blessed Mhlanga has appeared in court in the capital Harare, where he faces charges of transmitting messages intended to incite public violence.
Critic Hopewell Chinono has been arrested for the third time in 6 months.
This is the case that brought everything into focus for me. Blessed Mhlanga, a journalist I've worked with and followed, was arrested. The charge? Interviewing the president's comrade come critic.
But you've got your own cars. You've got a hotel at your house that you built in Sanyat. Why do you want all this?
I want to be rewarded this way, not to be used like a political condom all the time.
When I heard about the arrest on 24 February 2025, I didn't just think, poor Blessed. I thought, this could have been me. What if I'm next? I needed to understand what the state was accusing him for and what this meant for the rest of us.
He's been charged with 164 of the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act. And as you've said, this criminalizes transmission of a data message with intention to incite public violence. I think the challenge with this law is, number one, it is very broad and vague. It targets broadcasting in particular, and then there's it's supposedly limited by the intention to commit public violence, but this is something which is very hard to quantify, right? Because it's not tied to an action. It's supposedly what's in someone's head. So this is an issue which is now going to the Constitutional Court, and so there's not much more that I can say about it at this point. Those are things which will be ventilated in the Constitutional Court. But yeah, this is the last thing I should say is that a very similar law was struck down many years ago, precisely because of the chilling effect that a law like this can have on the media, given that it essentially criminalizes publication or broadcasting, etc. It's very harmful for the media, and just as you can't know what I'm about to say as my interviewer, you should not be criminalized for the things that I may or may not say in an interview, and so that is really the heart of the issue with this particular charge and with this these charges that they're facing. When you see the way that a law like this is weaponized, it begins to become clear that this is it's essentially about reining in the media, making sure that you have a pliant media, a media that will only say what you want them to say, will not put a spotlight on issues. And that's precisely why this case and these charges are so much bigger. It's about the journalism profession. It's about the criminalization of journalism as a whole, and this is why, and that affects us all, not just those in the journalism profession, but the entire public. Those of us who need news. We need accurate, verified news. From a wide range of perspectives, and so it really affects us all.
It became clear the courtroom isn't just where journalists are tried, it's where the truth itself is on trial.
We as young people are the hardest hit by everything that is happening. If you look at the people who've been hardest hit by the violence, the people are getting abducted, beaten up, the people are getting arrested. We've had reports of young people as young as 6 years old, as young as 11 years old, being taken and beaten up. We have to talk about these things because they are affecting young people.
Zimbabwe police have arrested Namatai Quza, Samuel Gwenzi and Vusumzi Moyo, as well as Robinson Chere. They've been charged with disorderly conduct in a public place after their arrest and detention at the Robert Mugabe International Airport.
I needed to hear from someone who's been silenced but hasn't stopped speaking. So I reached out to Namatai Quza, an activist, organizer, and truth teller.
If you look at it from a place of, it's hard to be arrested, it's hard to be in prison, and particularly in my case, there were instances when you're actually arrested and the government is fully aware that there is no issue. In one of the cases, I was out of the country on whatever it is that they're accusing me on, right? When you clearly can see that this is the weaponization of the judiciary system to make your life very difficult, it's absolutely hard. But I'll tell you what else is hard, right? It's hard to not have water coming out of your tap. It's absolutely hard to not have 3 basic meals a day. It's hard to not have good quality education. It's also hard to watch your loved ones dying in public health systems that are basically, death traps, right? And I think our generation of young people must choose their heart. So to then speak up and say, the hospital's not functional, the water is not coming out of the tap, and then end up in prison, it's a kind of hard. But to also continue to live a life without possibility, a life that is indignifying, it's also another version of hard. But I think it would be better for us to deal with this hard that brings about prospects of change, that has this allure, this promise of a better life, a better future. Because I always now tell, especially young people, that in the past, abroad was the end game, right? You would say, I will leave the country and I'll go to that other country and whatnot. But today, as we speak, abroad is messed up. You want to go to the US, you want to go to South Africa. It's messed up, and people don't want other people in their countries, right? So I think we are at this moment where we might have to look the problem in the eye, to confront it, to weigh our cost, to say, maybe we'll have some nights in prison, maybe you will be abducted, maybe you will be tortured. But if that would inadvertently lead to us having better prospects, to having a dignified life, maybe that is the cost and we should be willing to pay it.
Listening to her reminded me why we do this work. Not because it's easy, but silence costs more. If the state is shutting down media spaces, who's holding the line? Who's protecting the very idea of a free press? I reached out to Zimbabwe Media Commission chairperson, Professor Ruby Magosongi, who agreed to speak to me about the issue. But a day before the interview, she informed me about an engagement she needed to attend to. I then reached out to Media Alliance Zimbabwe coordinator, Nigel Nyamutumbu, to find out the state of press freedom in Zimbabwe.
It certainly affects how journalists and the media broadly report on critical issues, because you are not then too sure of when it might hit you, and you are not too sure of your political correctness, if you like, because if you get arrested for pursuing a story, or if you look at the provision at law, which is now being obviously challenged at the Constitutional Court, to say the law is essentially unconstitutional. In fact, it's reminiscent of criminal defamation, which was obviously outlawed in the context of our first constitution. But even then, if you look at the framing, that transmission of data, which is the very fabric of journalism, media is about transmitting data. And yes, of course, the attempt there is to try and ensure, because I mean, free expression in itself is not an absolute right, but the measures which it should be restricted must pass the prudence test. Is it, is it necessary? Is it measurable? Because once a law becomes vague, and to an extent that it becomes open to interpretation, that what you've actually said amounts to inciting violence, perhaps violence which would have not occurred, and then and so forth. It becomes a whole ball game. In terms of its implementation and enforcement. So to that extent, it then presents challenges for journalists because they would want to obviously be more cautious now as to what they report. They become more cautious because we have the mantra that no story is worth dying for, no story is worth going to prison for. It's not an ideal place for any individual and so forth. So yes, to that extent, we now have journalists operating within fear, but our clarion call remains that professional journalism, ethical journalism, being true to our codes and standards of journalism is our first line of defense, and we should continue to do that in terms of our standards and quality of information, despite these fears that we are now living within. And we should continue to engage with the political leadership, with the security forces, with everyone, every stakeholder involved, to respect the work of journalism, because it is just but a mirror of the society.
This reminded me that journalism is not just under attack, it's under defense. And that defense is fragile, urgent, and necessary. I attended the Critical Mineral Conference in Harare, where former legislator Themba Mliswa, now headman, was a speaker. And I decided to ask him about his thoughts regarding Bless's arrest and the state of press freedom in Zimbabwe.
What I can say, he is a hero, not two ways about it, because at times you have to pay a price for what you believe in, but remain consistent and resilient. And I hope that can inspire and motivate a lot of journalists, because yes, there's the aspect of repression, which most journalists are probably worried about. But if Blessed could go through that, okay, why can't you equally put your profession first? It's a profession which, journalism, which has got its days, and at times you have to be brutally honest, but factual too. And that's why there are two sides of the story and all that. And I'm hoping that, our country is not known to be a country that is for repression. But I think if you have to also come up with laws that regulate whatever you believe is not in the best interest of the country, it's not patriotic, it's not nationalistic, I think there are ways of dealing with that. And I think the journalists must, I think, if anything, rally behind their profession. Even within ZANU-PF too, there's times when they also criticize what the journalists have said, but there are also those who are pro-ZANU-PF again, who also write what is not factual. I think ethics are critical, and I think there must be respect in terms of the fourth estate, because I think how do people speak and how do they express themselves when there's repression? It's akin to a home where there's a father who runs the home with the iron fist, does not allow the mother to talk on behalf of the kids, neither does he allow the kids to talk. That is not a home.
I started this journey trying to understand someone else's arrest. I ended it realizing that every time I pick a mic, I am raising a flag, a signal that I won't be quiet, and I'm not alone.